Subscribe to History Vault right now, because what you're about to hear is not recycled trivia or romantic folklore. This is, well, hard-earned knowledge pulled from surviving structures, shipwrecks and engineering manuals that modern builders still struggle to fully replicate. Medieval engineers were fighting rot centuries before synthetic sealants, pressure-treated lumber or chemical preservatives existed, and they did it so well that parts of their work are still standing today. If you care about real history, real survival knowledge, and techniques that actually endured time, stay with this episode from beginning to end. Why rot was the silent enemy of the medieval world, and why failure meant collapse. Rot was not a cosmetic issue in the Middle Ages. It meant bridges collapsing into rivers, ships rotting out at sea, fortifications weakening under siege, and homes becoming unlivable within a generation. Timber was everywhere, and stone alone could not solve every structural need. Medieval engineers understood something modern builders often forget. Rot begins with trapped moisture and stagnant air. Their entire approach focused on controlling water movement rather than trying to block it entirely. This mindset shaped everything from how wood was cut to how buildings were oriented on the landscape. You know, medieval builders were quite particular about the timber they selected and prepared, aiming to resist decay right from the start. They certainly didn't just use any wood that was available. Instead, they chose species quite deliberately. Oak, chestnut, larch, and elm were favoured, mainly because of their dense fibres and natural tannins, which really helped the timber endure over time. Now, trees were often felled in winter, when the sap content was at its lowest. This simple timing reduced internal moisture and slowed down fungal growth quite a bit. In many regions, those logs were then left to season for years under cover, allowing the moisture to escape gradually, rather than being trapped inside the wood. And, well, a modern application of this principle is pretty straightforward. If you're building anything meant to last outdoors, it's best to avoid rushed green lumber and allow for extended air drying whenever possible. Moving on, let's talk about how charring, smoke curing and surface carbonization created natural barriers against rot. One of the most misunderstood medieval techniques is actually surface charring. Posts that were destined for ground contact were often lightly burned until the outer layer carbonized. This process created a hydrophobic surface that resisted moisture and discouraged insects and fungi from taking hold. Japanese builders later refined a similar method, but medieval Europeans were already using it for fence posts, bridge pilings, and foundation supports. You know, you can still apply this today by carefully charring the ends of posts used for garden structures or outbuildings, and then sealing them with natural oils afterward rather than synthetic coatings. Why did medieval foundations focus on drainage rather than sealing? Well, medieval engineers knew that trying to seal wood against water completely was, frankly, a losing battle. Instead, they designed foundations that encouraged water to move away quickly. Wooden beams were often set on stone pads, gravel beds, or layers of crushed chalk that drained moisture downward. And those air gaps you sometimes see. They were intentional, not accidental. A practical modern step is elevating wooden structures slightly above ground level and ensuring airflow beneath decks, sheds and cabins instead of enclosing them tightly. It's a simple adjustment, but it really helps preserve the wood over time. Now, let's talk about how tar, pitch, lime wash and animal fats actually took the place of what we think of as modern sealants. Rather than relying on synthetic sealants, medieval builders turned to natural substances that, interestingly, stayed flexible over time. Pine tar and pitch, for example, were widely used on ships, bridges and exposed beams. These materials, they penetrated the wood fibres but still allowed for a slow release of moisture. Lime wash, which we often associate with stone, was also applied to timber, creating an alkaline surface that was, frankly, quite hostile to fungi. In some regions, animal fats and oils were actually rubbed into wooden tools and structural elements. Today, pine tar oils and lime-based coatings are still available, and, they can be used on outdoor wood without trapping moisture the way plastic-based sealants so often do. So, why did medieval ships last for decades, even in those harsh marine environments? Shipbuilders faced what you might call the ultimate rot challenge: constant exposure to salt water. Their solution was a clever combination of wood selection, overlapping plank construction, and regular maintenance, rather than relying on permanent sealing. Hulls were designed to flex just a bit with the waves instead of cracking any coatings. And of course, tarred seams were renewed seasonally. The lesson here is, maintenance over perfection. For modern survivalists or off-grid builders, planning periodic reapplication of natural treatments is often more effective than, relying on a single permanent product. How medieval roof design protected entire structures from decay. Steep roof pitches were not just an aesthetic choice. They shed water quickly and reduced the time moisture spent on structural elements. Wide overhangs protected walls and beams from rain. And gutters, when present, were oversized and simple, designed to clog less often. A modern adaptation is, really, prioritizing roof design and water runoff management before worrying about coatings or treatments. So, why did medieval engineers trust airflow as much as protection? Well, ventilation was actually intentional in barns, halls and fortifications. Open trusses, raised floors and unsealed cavities all allowed damp air to escape, which, was absolutely vital for preserving the integrity of these structures. Rot thrives in stagnant environments, and medieval builders instinctively avoided them. Even today, just improving airflow around wooden structures can, dramatically extend their lifespan without any chemical intervention. What modern builders, survivalists and historians should take from this knowledge is, the medieval solution to rot was not a single product or trick. It was really a system built on material knowledge, environmental awareness and routine care. You can apply these principles right now by choosing the right wood, allowing it to dry properly, encouraging drainage and airflow, using natural protective treatments and, importantly, accepting maintenance as part of longevity. These methods built cathedrals, ships and bridges that quite impressively outlasted empires. Subscribe to History Vault if you value history that actually teaches you something useful. Share this episode with anyone who believes modern technology has all the answers, and help keep this knowledge alive for the next generation of serious history enthusiasts and survival-minded builders.